Hi all. So in this section we will learn about the various material handling equipments that are used in different factories and industries. So the different types such as the hoist, the cranes, the trucks, robots, conveyor belts, etc. And these material handling equipments are broadly classified into the fixed and movable types. So in this section we will see what are those types involved. So all the material handling equipments are broadly classified into two. This is based on their flexibility in which the path through which they can move. So the first one is the fixed path equipments. They can only move in a fixed path that was laid out earlier. The best example for this classification are the conveyor belts and monorail devices such as the monorail trolleys. Uh, Now an exception in this category is the overhead crane. Even though the base of an overhead crane is fixed, it can move in any manner within its space. To put it in another way, within its space, it has almost all degree of freedom to move in any direction. So it can said to be a fixed path as well as a variable path. The second one is the variable path equipments. They have no restriction in the direction of their movement and can reach almost all part of the factory or manufacturing unit. Although their size is a constraint, their direction of movement is not a constraint, or it does not pose any restriction. The example for this are the trucks, the forklift, mobile cranes, etc. Now these forklifts are available in many ranges and depending on their size, they can lift the loads and move from one place to another. Also, the different attachments can be provided to these forklifts and this also increases their versatility. So these forklifts can be said to be maneuverable or they can be manipulated to do various functions. Now let us see the different types of material handling equipments, and the first one is the conveyor. So the conveyors are useful for moving the material from one position to another or a one fixed workstation to another fixed workstation. And this movement can be either continuously or periodically or intermittently. And the best day-to-day life example for these conveyors are the ones that are used in the billing sections of supermarkets and all. The purchased items from the one customer is kept at one end and it is moved to the other end of the cashier using a conveyor belt. That is the simplest example of a conveyor belt, and they are of various types. They could be with rollers, wheels, or belt to move the materials along. And depending on the requirement, they are also their size as well as their power requirement or the power that is used to drive the conveyor belts will also be different. The initial investment cost for conveyors are very large, and usually there might be a decision to take whether to install the conveyors or use the traditional material handling equipments. Also, if two conveyor belts are converging to a point, then there must be a optimization or a decision to take to control the speed of the two different conveyor belts so that there is no damages occurring at the convergence point. So these are some of the commonly used conveyor belts that are used in industries, factories, as well as in large malls, etc. And the first one, the belt conveyor, is the most simpler type of conveyor belt. It is actually a two roller wheels. One is driven as well as the other is driver wheel, and a belt is continuously rotating on these two wheels. As the belt moves along, it will take the material that are provided through a hopper or by hand, and it takes the material from the initial end to the discharge end. Similar is the working of other other conveyor belts also, roller conveyor, wheel conveyor or screw conveyor. Here only difference is that the mechanism by which the belt or the material is being moved. Now these two figures shows some common examples of spiral conveyors. Here the belt or the material is moved in a spiral manner. Here, in case of a roller shoot, the spiral is rotated with respect to the central axis. The different materials, the cartons, the boxes, the cases, the barrels, etc., are provided or supplied to this spiral case periodically. And as the spiral moves, it takes the material from either from top to the bottom or from bottom to the top, depending on the movement of the spiral. Similar is the movement of a spiral shoot, where usually it is used to take the material from bottom at a lowest point to a higher point, where the spiral belt or the spiral shoot is continuously rotating. The second one is the industrial truck. So this one is a flexible type material handling equipment, and these are very much flexible than conveyors, as they can access any 2 points within the factory. There is no restriction in the points from which the industrial truck can collect the equipments or the materials, as well as to deliver them. The only restriction that is faced by the industrial trucks is the structures that may be placed in the path of them in their path. They are of various sizes and shapes, and they can handle almost any material. They can be petrol driven, electric driven, hand powered, etc. Now, the greatest advantage of an industrial truck is the attachment that can be provided to it, so that they can carry almost any type of the material. The figures shows the commonly used industrial trucks. The first one is the platform truck, where the material can be placed, barrels such as etc. can be placed on this platform and can be moved from one place to another. Similarly, the fork truck is used to lift the equipments or the lift the materials to a height and place it into their positions. Now, industrial tractors are used to carry the materials by using an attachment on their backside. All these material handling equipments, the industrial tractors, can have different types of attachments to them, and this is helpful in carrying different any type of materials actually. The third one is the cranes and hoist. Now, this one is an exception to the fixed material handling equipments, where actually, even though their structures are fixed, they can deliver materials at any point within that area. So the major advantage of cranes and hoist is that they can move heavy materials through overhead space, such that there is no restriction for the movement of man or people and material in the ground space. Their big disadvantage is that they can serve only a limited area. So this is because the cranes and hoists are placed on structures, and they can move in between the structures only, not beyond the structures. So their area of action is limited. And again, there are several types of cranes and hoists, and within different loading capacities and sizes. Now they can also be used for intermittent production as well as continuous production. Here again, the figure shows the different cranes as well as the hoist. Here in the first two figures, we can see the two types of cranes that are used. In the first crane, the crane is more like a cantilever beam, and it can deliver the particles within the 360 degree of the span of this crane arm. In the second case, the crane is hoisted or put on a two ends, more like a simply supported beam, and the horizontal member or the horizontal arm can move along these structures put on the two sides, and beyond that structure they cannot move, hence their area of action is limited. Similar is the case of hoist. The figure shows different types of hoist that are used. So they can also move, they also can move only on the structures that are used to house this hoist. Beyond that, their area of action is limited. These cranes and hoists are available in different sizes and different load capacity. So, and in most cases, they are used to carry heavy loads in like large factories. As their installation requires a large amount of money, they are usually used in large factories. These are some of the major types of cranes that are used. and here the overhead cranes as well as the tower cranes are the most commonly used ones. So the figure shows an overhead crane, and these are used for handling loads over a rectangular area depending on the size of the cranes. Now a simplest overhead crane, sorry, now a simplest overhead crane will be consisting of a structural bridge that is supported by the two walls. There will be also be a supporting lift block or a hoist trolley which will carry the material. Now the control of this structural bridge will be done by a pendant at the floor level or using a cabin at the bridge. Now the major advantage of this overhead crane is the freedom from floor obstruction. There is no restriction to any movement within the floor level as the crane is situated at a height. The next type of crane is the tower crane, and this is used in various construction projects of high buildings, bridges, cooling towers, etc. Now, the construction of a tower crane can be used in a construction site and then it can be dismantled and reused at another site. So, the figure shows a schematic diagram or a representation of this tower crane. As you can see, the vertical member or the horizontal member which houses the trolley. This is used to move the material from one point to another, and this one is balanced by a counterweight at the opposite side, and the swing ring allows the horizontal member to move through 360-degree of that plane. This entire structure is supported by a fixed tower and a tower footing. So the size of the tower crane determines the entire area in which it can deliver the materials. The fourth one are the containers, or the most simplest type of material handling equipment. This could be either dead containers or live containers. Here the dead containers are examples given by the cartons, the barrels, the skids, etc. They hold the material to be transported, but they cannot move on their own. It requires either another material handling equipment or an operator, a human operator, to move these dead containers. Now, unlike dead containers, the live containers, example the wagons, wheelbarrows, or the computer self-powered containers. These containers are live containers as they can move on their own and does not require the involvement of a human operator. Now, these containers handling equipments, they can both contain the material for some time as well as they can move the material and is mostly used operated manually. Now, the fifth one are the robots. There are various and lot of different types of robots available. They vary in size and in the function and their maneuverability or the method in which they can be manipulated. So even though these many robots are used for handling and transporting material, they can also be used to perform functions such as the welding, etc. Welding, spray painting, etc. Now, the major advantage of the robots is that they can be used to perform very dangerous or hazardous tasks such as in hostile environments such as the mining. Every year, a large number of people faces death as well as other accidents while getting involved in such hazardous environments. So, by employing robots in such hazardous environment, we can prevent these accidents as well as the loss of human lives. The last type of material handling equipment is the elevators. So these are machines that are used for lifting and lowering loads in large factories, multi-floor factories, warehouses, stores and terminals. The elevators that are used in the malls and high-story buildings are the best example for this type, which are usually used for the movement of humans. The common type of elevators are the hydraulic elevators, the monorails, cage elevators, hydraulic lift, bucket elevators, etc. The figure shows the different types of elevators that are used. Now, even though they differ in their shape, their size, their capacity, etc., as well as the method by which they get their power, the basic function remains the same. That is the vertical movements of either humans as well as the materials.